Welcome to the France 24 debate. Turkey's rush to the polls. Erdogan calls a snap vote to cement his power. Recep Tayyip Erdogan's announced he's bringing forward the elections. His aim is to cement that hold on the top office. His ambition to become an executive president. His critics say this is a term that merely dresses up the basic role of a dictator. The same man hiring, firing, and of course deciding. Well, this is raising fears in Turkey and among the Turkish diaspora over an increase of authoritarian rule from Ankara. But supporters of Erdogan perhaps see no problem. International observers, though, share the concern of those inside who are already under pressure because of disagreeing with the government. Well, here to discuss all issues relating from this, here in the studio, Ali Kazansigil, director of Anatolia Journal and author of Turkey, From a Revolution to Another. Ali, thank you very much for being with us. We'll bring you in very shortly. By satellite, joining us from Istanbul in Turkey, we have Ahmet Al-Buray. Ahmet is editor-in-large at TRT World. Thank you, sir, for joining us. We're bringing you very shortly. By satellite from Washington, D.C., Ilan Tania, senior editor of Arval News. Thank you also for joining us. Now, before we hear from our guests, let's hear more on Erdogan's grand plan.
A push to consolidate presidential power sooner than scheduled. Minutes after meeting with Devlet Bahçeli, the leader of Turkey's main nationalist party and a key political ally, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced next November's elections would be brought forward to June the 24th.
Be it the cross-border operations we're organising in Syria or events of historic importance in our region, it is necessary for Turkey to overcome uncertainties as soon as possible. Switching to a new system of government is urgent, so that decisions regarding our country's future can be made and implemented with greater strength.
While headlines speak of an electoral bombshell, Istanbul residents are more reticent. Since the failed coup of 2016, Erdogan has intensified his repression of political dissent.
Given all the rumours we're hearing, I was prepared for something like this to happen. Erdogan wants to get a handle on things before it gets harder for him.
There are things that should change, but this sudden announcement is disturbing. It's very hard to tell what will happen next.
In April 2017, tens of thousands of Turks took to the streets to protest against changes to the constitution that would hand significant powers from parliament to the president after the next election. Those measures narrowly passed, meaning Turkey's next president will be handed a host of new powers a year and a half earlier than planned. As Erdogan seeks to strengthen his hand, critics decry what they call an erosion of democracy.
Aksimais Belkin there explaining some of the things at stake with this changing plan by Erdogan, which some are seeing as a power grab, others seeing as a way of just basically doing what they want him to do. And it depends, I suppose, which side of the fence you are on. Let's bring in our guests and get their points of view, starting with our man in the studio, Ali Kazansigil. Ali, great to see you. Now, what is your immediate interpretation of Recep Tayyip Erdogan bringing forward these elections? What do you think?
Well, I think he wants to strengthen his power. He's controlling all the institutions of the state already, and now he wants to implement the new constitution as soon as possible, which gives all the powers to him. For instance, just to give an example, the members of the Constitutional Court will be appointed by the president. In other words, today in Turkey, there's no more a state of rule of law, state of law, as they say, or a democratic system. And he wants to strengthen his powers, which are already very large, as soon as possible, because there is a sort of a patriotic ambiance in Turkey as a result of the Afrin incursion, etc. And also his ally in the extreme nationalist party is in trouble, because there is some part of this party leave this party and created under the leadership of a woman, of one of the members, under the name of Good Party. And apparently, in the polls, her popularity is rising. And if Erdogan loses the additional addition coming from the extreme right, he may lose his majority. So he looks very strong, etc., but he has some weaknesses, and therefore he wants to guarantee, as it were, his power through this new initiative, which is, of course, one of the reasons is this new party created, a good party, according to the Turkish law. It was created just a couple of months ago. It will become effective and participate in elections, etc., as of 28th June. So he's
4 days after the election.
No, 4 days. Yes.
Yes.
So, and this woman is saying that he put this to 24 June, so that we cannot participate in the election.
This seems devilish.
And there's things of course, these, you know, the very small things like this, but he's establishing his dictatorship. I mean,
this seems like complete manipulation of the whole system.
Absolutely, complete manipulation. Absolutely.
Let's bring in Ahmed Al-Bourra, who's TRT's editor-at-large. Ahmed, I hope you can hear us, and we're hoping to hear from you, sir, joining us from Istanbul. Give us your thoughts.
Well, as a matter of fact, what's going to happen here in Turkey is it's a system that Turkey wants to implement, the same as what's happening in France, the same as what's happening in the United States. It's a presidential system that will fit the people here, and it was the choice of the people who voted in the referendum a couple of months ago, choosing to change the semi-parliamentary into a presidential system. And now the president and any other candidate who sees himself or herself legible and capable of running for the presidency will have the chance to do so. Even the lady that the guest in the studio is speaking about, Meral Akşener, who split from the MHP, the Nationalist Party, and established and set up her own party that is the Good Party, would have the chance to run. The idea that he's speaking about today, Meral Akşener spoke about that on the 10th of June, she will be able with her party to run for the election, and if she can guarantee 100,000 signature, if their party is not running for the parliamentary election, then at least she can get the 100,000. So it is not a kind of tailoring all the laws, or it's a dictator or a one-man rule. It's a way of democracy that Turkey is going back again to the people to vote. And if these people see that President Erdogan and his party is worthy to be elected again, they will elect him. And if they see that the policies that he is following, that he is risking the stability of the republic here in Turkey, if they say that the cross-border operation against the terrorist organizations on the other neighboring countries are jeopardizing the economy and the policy of their country, of course they're not naive, they're not immature to choose this party again, and they can cast their ballot choosing any other valid candidate or party to replace Erdogan and his party. That is common sense, and that is the basic of democracy anywhere.
Ahmed, thank you very much indeed. The constitution changes were made last year in April, I understand. The Afrin incursion, as you were talking about, against the Syrian Kurds, the YPG, considered as a terror organisation by Ankara. The YPG, of course, supported by Washington. So once again, the nuance changes from country to country, how you look at this. We had a tweet in already, which you can join, of course, if you're watching. Hashtag F24debate. First tweet coming in. The words election and Turkey do not hold credibility. That's from our first person who's tweeted in. That's their opinion. Let's get another opinion from one of our guests and bring in Ilan Tanir, who is from Aval News, joining us from the United States. I hope you can hear us. We can see you. Tell us your feelings. Are you comfortable with what's happening in Turkey right now?
Of course not. Actually, we are talking about, as the opposition party is calling the election, is a ambushed election. It is not early election. It is giving a sense of that elections are still being held. Nevertheless, when we look at Russia or Egypt, in those countries also elections are being held. Let's look at the picture. President Erdogan only Tuesday morning stated that the elections will be held in November of 2019. The next day, suddenly, his ally, nationalist leader Bahçeli, stated that there should be an early election. A day later, they had 30-minute summit. And here we are. We see that the 66 days later, there will be election. And of course, as the first guest stated, this will eliminate one of the most formidable candidate, Meral Akşener, from the New Good Party. So again, in Russia and in Egypt, there are other ways to eliminate the opponents, and Turkey, by this way, excluding, pushing out the Good Party out of the election. Obviously, there's a new hurdle. And why Mr. Erdogan does not wait till 2019? Mr. Erdogan is known by his repeated statements, half a dozen, maybe dozen statements, that he is proud that he doesn't hold early elections because of the stability of the country. Now we see that there is a ambushed election in 2 months, and there is not even a legislation right now in the parliament outlining how a candidate can be presidential candidate. This bill we are talking about will be passed next week. Right now, the people on the street in cities like Beşiktaş in Istanbul are not allowed to give their signatures to their favorite candidates because there is no legislation to outline it. So why Mr. Erdogan wants in 2 months? Because the economy is doing very badly, and he is, I think, afraid also the possibility of this Good Party leader will come into the theater, and she will also take a lot of a percentage from his own party. So he decided to make this ambushed election and go forward with, because he thinks that he might win if he holds this election in 2 months.
So Erdogan being very pragmatic about this, some might say Machiavellian, choosing to go to the country, choosing to try to cement his position and, of course, implement those measures that were changed in the Constitution a year ago to give him, which would amount to absolute power out of basically. And all this taking place under a state of emergency. Turkey, of course, still under that state of emergency from the attempted coup d'etat against Erdogan back in 2016.
Exactly. Yes, this is one of the problems. I mean, to hold elections under this rule of emergency is not particularly democratic. I mean, this emergency situation, I mean, rule has been going on and on. And there is no disturbances in the country. There's no reason. And so she should stop, eliminate this, then hold elections, perhaps. Also, let's not forget that Erdogan won the referendum 2 years ago, thanks to massive frauds in particularly remote areas of Anatolia, and this was recognized by the European Union. And he despite all this, he got simply 51.4%.
In spite of massive voter fraud,
exactly,
as recognised by the European Union.
Okay. In other words, one of the reasons why he's doing all this, because he is still not certain to win the forthcoming elections under normal conditions. That is, I think, one of the main explanations to this really unusual and undemocratic situation.
So the main opponent to Erdogan would be this good party?
Yes, good party, but also part of the Turkish society. It's true that Erdogan is supported by large populations in Anatolia, etc., because he improved, for instance, in public hospitals, the children of modest families are treated without paying, etc. I mean, he did some
which
things,
is a good thing.
which is good things. In fact, between 2002 and roughly 2009. He was a very democratic and liberal leader, and suddenly he radicalized and he became a sort of a dictator.
Ali, we'll pick up from that in part 2 of our debate. That concludes part 1. Stay with us, more to come here, live from Paris. Back to the France 24 debate. We're looking at Turkey's rush to the polls, Erdogan calling a snap vote to cement his power. Our guests, Ali Kazansigil, here in the studio, director of the Anatolia Journal and author of Turkey, From a Revolution to Another. Ali, thanks for being with us. Joining us by satellite from Istanbul, Ahmet Al-Buray, TRT World Editor-at-Large. And joining us from Washington, D.C., from Arval News, Ilan Tania, Senior Editor there. I'll pick back up with you, Ali. You were talking about the change in Erdogan from someone who used to be, as you put it, very democratic to someone who became more authoritarian.
Yes. I mean, I have no direct explanation. Perhaps the usual sentence is power corrupts. I mean, as he was very popular and he was appreciated by also internationally. Turkey was presented as a model for all Muslim societies, countries around the world, and power creates paranoia. I don't know. People lose their good sense. I don't know. I mean,
a loss of perspective, a change of perspective, and a sense of trying to.
Yes, and now he has also another obsession. He is to replace Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, who created the Turkish Republic
in
1923, to replace this figure in Turkish history as the greatest leader. For instance, the creation of the Republic is based on the Lausanne Treaty in the same year, where the independence of Turkey was recognized by great powers. And he keeps attacking this treaty by saying that Turkey abandoned the territories the Ottomans conquered, etc., etc., and of course to attack Atatürk's place in the mind and the memory of the Turks.
Okay, so there's a clear sense of trying to create his own legend.
I mean, he beyond his urge to keep the power, he has also the grandiose ideas about his personality and his future and his image in the Turkish history.
Ali, thank you. Let's go to Istanbul and bring in Ahmet Al-Buray from TRT World, the editor-at-large there. Ali, I hope you heard what Ali had to say. Ahmed, sorry, I hope you heard what Ali was saying. Excuse me. And Ahmed, I'm interested to know what you think about Recep Tayyip Erdogan's current position, about a change that Ali was talking about here in perception, about how he does things, about how he views power and his own role in Turkish society.
Yeah, before I answer about this, I'd like to go back and to two main points. The first thing is Meral Akşener. You know, this lady, with all due respect, she ran for the Good Party leader. She ran for the election in her own party, former party, that is the MHP, Nationalist Party, and she was not able to defeat the leader, Devlet Bahçeli. So with all due respect, will she be able to run for the presidency and defeat President Erdogan? And even if she does, why will the president be worried about her? This is democracy and she can run. He doesn't do anything to prevent her running for the election. That's number one. The second thing is, why did Erdogan decide with his party to start this snap election very soon, in 2 months or so? It's according to the constitution that was endorsed by the majority of the Turkish people, who agreed that it's either two conditions: whether the president of the republic decides to go for early election, or the 3/5 of the parliament members who would say and ask for early election. So it's still according to the constitution. The second main point is the state of emergency and whether this is going to jeopardize the ongoing democratic process or the coming pending election. It's the same as what happened in France. You know, as if correct me if I'm mistaken, the French President Macron was elected while the state of emergency was still in place and was still in effect, that was imposed in 2015 after the terrorist attack in Paris, and it was lifted only in December 2017 after the election of Macron. So I don't think that Turkey now is in the luxury of lifting the state of emergency, as it's fighting in different multiple fronts in Iraq, in Syria, and it was exposed to a coup attempt. Now, coming back to President Erdogan and whether he is going to reinstate himself as a dictator, or he's tottering with Turkey toward the path of anarchy and dictatorship, autocracy. The president didn't oust at least half of the cabinet like what Donald Trump did. Donald Trump, by the firing of McMaster, the last aide in the cabinet, in the administration, he fired almost 48% of the people he himself appointed as the executive power. Now, the presidency here in Turkey is still it's debatable whether it's going to be Erdogan who is going to be in control of everything, whether the parliament will be able to control and observe, you know, like scrutinize and inspect all the MPs and other stuff. The judicial system is still intact. Still, it's a new democracy that is going in the right path. And we're still speaking about Erdogan stating himself as a dictator. It is very ironic when we speak about President Sisi of Egypt as a partner, and we still consider the democracy of Turkey, where it's very promising and it's very progressing in a model that would be praised by anybody in the West. Still, we're having doubts about it. We're speaking about Erdogan history, trying to, you know, like recreate the Ottoman Empire, trying to cancel the legacy of Ataturk. It's very weird.
Freedom of the press, aren't there? There are concerns about freedom of speech. There are concerns about freedom of the press. For instance, can you guarantee, with the number of journalists that get arrested in Turkey, that anybody who is running against Recep Tayyip Erdogan will get the same amount of media coverage, for instance?
Of course not.
Of course, this is a very genuine point. We can discuss it. Now, you have to admit, though, that there is a difference between independent journalists and self-proclaimed journalists who defend the coup attempt. That is a very crucial, sensitive issue here in Turkey when it comes to the parliament of the state that was attacked for the first time in history by a group of plotters, of putschists who tried to hijack the whole democratic system. And then you speak about these kind of journalists who are still defending this. This is a there is a difference, a big difference between freedom of expression and responsible, accountable journalism,
Ahmed,
where a whole country was completely hijacked.
Thank you, sir. I need to bring someone else in. Ahmed, thank you very much indeed. We'll get back to you on this issue because it is really important. Quick look at a tweet. Putin, Erdogan, Emperor Jinping, Rocket Man, they're everywhere. Seems to be the only democracies left in the world are the English-speaking world and Western Europe. That's an opinion from someone watching this programme. Let's bring in our man in Washington, Ilan Tania, who is from Ahval News. In terms of the fair coverage of those who stand in an election in Turkey, Ilan, do you feel that the words of Ahmed that we just heard are true? Do you feel that's the situation, or do you feel that there is some kind of manipulation of the media which goes on?
Well, let me address a couple of issues that Ahmet Alburay stated from Istanbul. First of all, he talked about Meral Akşener against Devlet Bahçeli. Everybody has entitled on his own opinion, but not entitled to have own facts. In fact, Meral Akşener was not allowed to run against Devlet Bahçeli because a local court stopped that initiative. So Meral Akşener had to leave her party and create his own party due to this situation. So she was not lost against Devlet Bahçeli. The second thing is, yes, Constitution allows early election, but we are talking about ambushed election. It is 60-day election, excluding the one main party and putting a lot of hurdles. There is a difference. State of emergency, of course, is not same as France. There are 150,000 people got fired, about 40,000 people got jailed, and 90% of the Turkish media right now is under the President Erdogan's power, because about 170 press organizations have been shut down. Turkey is the country jails the most journalists in the world, even passing China or Russia. So talking about the comparing France and Turkey is just really laughable. Also, the journalists, of course, nobody would support a journalist who is supporting the coup. In journalists in Turkey who have been jailed, like Cumhuriyet journalists. I used to be a Washington representative. People like Ahmet Şık, people like Murat Sobuncu. These are the journalists, the world standard journalists. They have been put in jail over 18 months. So we are not talking about journalists who are defending coup, which I don't know. He might give some names and we can know the names. Yes, I mean, there's a big concern about the state of emergency, big concern about how Mr. Erdogan is trying to move forward from the point we are. He's not allowing, he is going to use all the state sources right now. His mayors and governors in 81 cities are going to work for him. So it is very much tilted election arena. This is not fair and free, as OSCE stated very openly in its report last year, and the conditions are much worse this year. And so this is election in name, but when we talk about free and fair elections, fair and free elections have nothing to do with these elections. And Turkey's rule of law right now, according to index of rule of law, Turkey is 99th out of 111 countries. So we should be careful when we are talking about independence of judiciary in Turkey. It is, according to world standards, Turkey is one of the least country, one of the last ones that can talk about independence of judiciary in Turkey.
Ilan, thank you very much indeed. Reporters Without Borders backing up what you were saying about the press, just to sort of point that out to you, the Paris-based watchdog. Another tweet coming in. Erdogan, it's obvious, becoming a dictator. He's insecure and afraid of losing election. That's something that's been reflected by at least one or two of our guests. Ali?
Yes, precisely. I was going to talk about this point. Under normal circumstances, the risk for him to lose these elections, at least the legislative elections, at least, is great. But this will not happen. He will win. You know why? Because in Turkey, so far, in polling bureaus, there was people controlling the situation, and there all the political parties represented in the parliament had a representative. Now, from this new constitution, these controllers will be appointed by the government.
So that's again another idea of.
I mean, there is no question. I mean, he's going to win the elections because there will be a fraud and no one would know because all the people there supposed to control the polls will do nothing to do so. I mean, it's obvious.
Back to Istanbul, Ahmed Al-Buray of TRT World. Ahmed, can I bring you back in on the issue of fairness and media coverage and ask you, as a media man, as a fellow journalist like me, will all the opposition candidates get the same kind of coverage that Recep Tayyip Erdogan will get on your channel?
Look, first, I have to also go back to the point that it's not an election and it doesn't have to do anything with election.
It's a hijacked election, we're being told, an ambush.
An ambush election or whatever. If so, why would the opposition party say that we're ready for the election and we're happy to go for any snap election? Now, coming back to the idea of media coverage, in Turkey, TRT is the official television and radio channel that covers the election and any other events, and it makes sure that every party has the chance to speak. Of course, they do not have the same chance as the ruling party, as they do have the campaigns all the time. They're arranging it. Even when the media channel goes to these rallies of the opposition, sometimes they're not welcomed by the supporters of these channels, and that would make some problems over there. But the opposition leader are always invited to come to the channel. I myself went to the parliament and met two of the opposition MPs, did some reports with them at the time of the Gulf crisis, when they said it's not in the interest of Turkey to side by Qatar, and this was on our outlet. So we do not deny anybody in the media here in Turkey to speak about it, but
Ali,
the point is, will they be willing to do so?
Go ahead. Sorry, Ahmed, I hear what you're saying. The point I would come back to you with is that in France, for instance, there is a law which says that you have to be equal in the time that you give to each party, to each candidate. Does such a law exist in Turkey?
The law does exist, and the problem is whether these people are willing to do so. If you ask the HDP party, the pro-Kurdish party, they refuse. They're reluctant to appear on the channel because they say that you're biased to the Erdogan, to the government party. So, and that would make a problem. If you're willing to come into any debate program, if you're willing as an opposition to appear on the channel, there is no problem to do that. Anybody is much more welcome to speak as far as they're willing to do so. The problem is in the opposition here in Turkey, there is a kind of white and black, and it's either you're the puppet, the mouthpiece of the government, and we do not respect you whenever you go. I myself went to cover the Hurriyet journalists who are in prison. I was in front of the courthouse in Istanbul covering covering it for more than 11 lives in a day to speak about what happened in that, and 3 of these people were released at that time. So we're much happy to have all these opposition voices, because we do respect the audience and we do understand that it's either you have both voices or the people are not stupid. They know that you should be exposing and objective as much as you can, but the problem is in the opposition, they're unwilling, they're reluctant to do so.
The people indeed are not stupid, as you say, Ahmed. I completely agree with you there. The journalists you talk about were supported by Reporters Without Borders from Paris, underlining that one as well. Let's bring in Ilan Tanier for more on that from Aval News. Ilan, you heard what Ahmed Al-Burai was saying. Were you convinced? Is that the case as you understand it?
Well, with all due respect to Mr. Al-Burai, I really don't know which country he is talking about. There is a study out there. There are studies out there. You can easily go Google and you can see how much time it was allocated to Mr. Erdogan last year's referendum, how much time allocated to AKP government officials, and how much time allocated to opposition parties. Mr. Al-Burai talked about the Kurdish party. As of today, 12 of their MPs are revoked their membership from the parliament. This party came out
Why they were revoked? Why was the membership revoked? Can you answer that one?
Ahmed, allow him to answer. Can you answer, Ilan?
Of course, there is not really a reason of that. For example, Mr. Demirtas. Let me give you the example on Demirtas. He was the leader of the second largest party. He has been in jail for over 18 months, since November of 2016. Does he have any conviction? No. The first time he saw
I would love
judge,
to jump in here.
he's not convicted.
Let him finish and I'll bring you in, please.
Let me finish.
Ahmed, let him finish, please, and I'll bring you in.
Let me finish.
Ahmed, stop,
because
please.
Whatever you are going to say is not going to change the facts. Mr. Demirtas right now has no conviction. He is under detention without any conviction, a leader who garnered about 60 million votes. First time he faced a judge about a month ago or 2 months ago after under detention about 14, 15 months. And he still, as of now, does not have any conviction. He is put in the jail, and then I am talking about the Turkish judiciary and authorities. They did not even let him go to the court for a while, and finally he got to court about a month or 2 months ago for the first time. So these are the HDP members we are talking about. And right now the state of emergency in Turkey's southeast and east, even worse than the western part of the countries. And I am not sure how in those cities the elections will be observed, because we have experienced a year ago how those elections were made, how the High Election Council on the election day changed the rules, which were low, so they did not have a right to change the rules. They changed the rules on the referendum day, and they said that they're going to admit unstamped
Ilan, thank
votes,
you. I need to bring,
in
fairness, Ahmed back in for his reply. Ahmed in Istanbul, over to you.
First, in a perfect world, you would say that they should have the chance the same as any democracy in the world, and I'd love to have any opposition party to speak about it. But the problem is, again, will they be able to do so? Are they having the authorization? Salahuddin Demirtas, when he won the 14% in the first election, everybody was happy that this new leader is willing to come, and everybody was happy that this is the new new democracy of Turkey. But the problem, he was not able to distance himself from the terrorist organization, the outlaw terrorist organization PKK, and his co-chairman Figan went to the funeral and participated in that. So how would you want the Turkish government to accept him while he does not or cannot even have a distance between himself and the PKK that is killing Turkish people? More than 40,000 people killed by the PKK terrorist organization in more than 3 decades, and he cannot keep a distance between himself and them. Everybody would be happy to invite him to the democracy into the parliament, but he was not able to do so.
Both guests completely disagreeing with you. Thank you, sir, for your thoughts. Thank you to Ilan Tania as well, joining us from Washington, and thank you to Ali Kazansigil here in the studio. Brief pause. Media Watch is next.